The Angle Dynasty League has concluded its second rookie draft. This is our 2025 rookie draft. We are going to cover all 60 picks today. How's it going, guys? My name is Andrew. I am the host of the Angle Fantasy Basketball Podcast. We are discussing the Angle Dynasty League. It is a 30-team real salary league. This league made 60 picks, so first round, second round, 30 picks for each one. And we're going to talk about the picks that happened today. Before we get into that, we are on the push for 500 YouTube subscribers. We are just about to hit 400 right now. We would love to get to 500. If you like this channel, if you like what we do, it would be a huge support to us. You can hit that subscribe button, subscribe to our channel, not only so you don't miss any of our future uploads and videos, but also to help us out in reaching our goal of 500 subscribers. So let's get into it here. Before I do that, all of the Angle boys are present today, so let's bring them in. First off, just about to go on his trip to Canada, Braxton, how are you today?
Excellent. I'm excited to talk about the rookie draft with you guys. I actually had a couple picks this year, so very excited to, yeah, talk through all of it.
Oh, I'm very excited for my picks. I made 4 picks this year and couldn't be happier to talk about them. But for someone who had a ton of draft stock in this first round, very high ranking draft stock, by the way, Mitchell, the owner of the San Miguel Beerman, how are you today, dude?
Great, man. This is my favorite part of the basketball season, draft season, and I'm particularly high on this class, especially with my number two overall pick in this rookie draft, who, we'll talk about pretty soon.
All right. So if your league hasn't drafted yet, you can use this draft list, which we will also post to our website, anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com, to get a full idea of where a very healthy Dynasty League drafted some of these players. This league includes other content creators, such as from Sports Ethos and Point Made Basketball, as well as other very good Dynasty players who have won multiple 30-team titles. In addition to all three of us in here, all own individual teams in this league. So this is a very stacked and competitive league. So let's take a look at how the 2025 rookie draft played out for us. Okay, here we are. So we're going to start from the very top and work our way back to the end of the draft. So for those of you deep league Dynasty players, if you're in a 30-team league, then this is going to be very helpful. Once we get to the end, we'll show you how the teams drafted at the back end here. Maybe you're not sure who you want in the late second round. Hopefully today's video is going to be a guide for you. So let's start off from the very beginning here. A new member of the league, Jolly J Rod, the owner of the Boston Celtics, shout out to you, took Cooper Flagg with the number 1 overall pick. So he acquired this pick in a trade with Blackwater Bossing. I think we'll probably go into more details of that trade maybe in a future trade video. I believe that deal involved Tyrese Halliburton going to Blackwater. This was pre-Halliburton injury in exchange for the right to draft Cooper Flagg. So Jolly J Rod went with the obvious pick here, taking Cooper Flagg number 1 overall. This is someone you should probably value somewhere between the 5 to 9 range in dynasty formats, especially in a startup draft. You might see him go quite early. This is a generational United States prospect. And I have to mention United States because he still doesn't touch where Victor Wembanyama is at. But for us, United States folks who really want a new star to rely on for Team USA, especially because so many of the recent MVPs are not from the United States, Cooper Flagg could be our guy. Any thoughts anyone wants to add on Cooper Flagg here before we move on?
I think it's
Nope.
pretty obvious of a pick.
All right, very good then. So now, this brings us to a great tank job from last year. The San Miguel Beermen, owned by our very own Mitchell, tanked in year 1 of our dynasty startup. He chose to accumulate draft picks. He took Amen Thompson with his initial startup pick. He lost as many games as he possibly could in order to benefit during the actual draft. And he took back-to-back picks here. Number 2 and number 3 overall went to him. So Mitchell, I'm going to give you the floor here. Talk about your Filipino brother in Dylan Harper, who you took at number 2 overall.
Yeah, Dylan Harper is that next wave of jumbo point guards who, pretty much can facilitate, do a little bit of everything, really. High steal rate, great scoring, especially in the paint. He's one of the most efficient rim scorers, despite not playing above the rim, which really goes to show the amount of touch and finesse he has and body control. We haven't seen this type of rim finishing as a point guard since Kyrie Irving. So Harper is a very special talent. I'm excited to have him on the squad, and we view him around that top 30 range in a dynasty league. And then my next pick, I took VJ Edgecombe, who I believe is in his own mini tier after Dylan Harper and between the next three guys who we'll discuss a little bit later. And we just saw his summer league debut, and he was phenomenal. He scored 28 points, had 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 stocks on 50% shooting. He led the team in plus minus despite losing, which goes to show his impact on winning. I'm especially excited for VJ Edgecombe, and I've seen some pretty good comparisons to like a Victor Oladipo, to a Jalen Suggs with a little bit more scoring pop. So very excited for what VJ Edgecombe is about to become. And then the next pick, Ace Bailey. So if anyone wants to chime in on the Monarchs pick here.
So the owner of the Monarchs, Nick Lovin, shout out to you. From the get-go, like early, like the conversation of Ace Bailey being a potential red flag in drafts for both real life and dynasty has been going on for a while. Nick Lovin has never cared about that. He's been very vocal about being high on Ace Bailey, and so props to him for sticking with his guy here at number 4 overall, because he could have taken one of these next two guys who went at 5 or 6. And then one thing you'll note is on this page here, we show the number that the person went at, so the pick, which is on the furthest left-hand side, and then right on the right-hand side, that column shows the angle rank. So anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com, you can see our current big board. We will probably come out with another one post Summer League, but these angle ranks right here reflect where they're currently at in our big board. So he only reached down one spot, taking Ace Bailey at number 4 overall. We have him ranked at number 5 overall. I mean, for Sacramento, who had a pretty disastrous first year in our league, you got to swing for the fences here. And that's really what Ace Bailey represents. Yes, the floor is not safe. However, the upside is a lot higher than the other two players that are going to be named off after him here. So I definitely don't blame Sacramento whatsoever for making this pick. I think this is something that, especially for, like, if this was a winning team who managed to grab this really high pick and is rolling into the next season with the same squad, then yeah, maybe you take someone with a safer floor. But for a team who did not have a great first season and really needs that home run swing, I like this Ace Bailey pick here, 4th overall for Sacramento. It's worth the risk. Absolutely is worth the risk, especially because he still has control of his future firsts.
Before we move down to pick number 5, I do want to give a little bit of league history here. Nick Lovin actually had the number 3 overall pick. He traded down to number 5, which was originally my pick, and then he traded up after rumors that Worth was going to take Ace Bailey at 4. So Nick Lovin had a lot of work to get Ace Bailey here, and he finally got his guy.
And like I said, props to him for sticking with his guy. So let's bring us down to the pick number 5. This is made by our defending champion, Blackwater Bossing. He took Con Kneppel, 5th overall, who we have 6th on our big board. So, resident Hornets fan, Braxton, how do you feel about just Con Kneppel on the Hornets in general, as well as this pick within a dynasty setting?
I'm really excited about it. I think Knippel is probably he'd be my number 4 on a big board. I know we have it differently on our kind of collective one, but I like Knippel a lot on the Hornets. I think he can be kind of maybe an elevated Malik Monk during his time with Charlotte. Now the acquisition of Colin Sexton does kind of muddy the waters a little bit for Knippel in his first year outlook, but in terms of just usage, but I think it's possible that Knippel does start day 1, and yeah, I just love the pick, especially for Blackwater Bossing and some of the trades he's been making this offseason. So I really like this here, and I think there's I don't know if you guys would disagree, but I think there's a pretty clear teardrop between Knippel and Trey Johnson, who went number 6. And again, I know on our board we have that a little bit differently. That's just my personal opinion, but yeah.
Well, one thing I will say in recent pods that I was on for both pre-draft and post-draft, I did label Khan as pretty much like outside of course, the top three. Once you get in this 4, 5, 6 range where things get a little tricky, I did label Khan as the safest option. He is the safety linchpin of this group. I really don't see a world where Khan is a bust. But of course, there is obviously the high ceiling upside of an Ace Bailey, maybe even a Trey Johnson, but Colin Knippel is someone who's going to have a very, very long NBA career. For sure he will. So, that discusses him. So, Braxton, you think he might start, right? So that would mean, him and Miller at the 2 and 3 spots as opposed to him playing behind Miller, let's say, at the 3 spot?
Yes.
All right. Very good. Very good. All right. Let's move down to number 6. The Los Angeles Lakers took Trey Johnson, who is ranked 4th overall on our big board. I will say that I probably had the biggest influence on him being number 4 on our big board. And the reason for that is the safety of the very high scoring and 3-point shooting output. So let's say things don't work out for Ace Bailey. And let's say Kneppel becomes more, kind of just a boring option. Yes, he's still solid, but not anything super flashy or exciting. Trey Johnson represents both the best of two worlds of flashy and exciting and a fairly safe option. It's not like he's 6'2", 6'3" like a Cam Thomas is. He's 6'6". He's highly athletic. He's an amazing scorer and a high volume 3-point shooter. So this is someone with the upside of 20 plus points per game. Yes, I'm well aware that there's not a ton of other supplemental stats. But if someone like Ace Bailey ends up being a bust, and if someone like Colin Kneppel kind of just has an all-around game, nothing super exciting, but just a solid floor, then where are we at with potentially the upside of a 20 plus per game scorer here? Maybe he's putting in 3 threes and 20 plus points per game. That's still a very, very hard category to find. Not just points, but high volume points, high scoring output, a potential just, one of your number 1 or 2 option for scoring is what the Lakers might be getting here with Trey Johnson at the 6th overall pick. So I like that one for him. He fell a little bit in my opinion, but I think you can really mix and match so much with this 4, 5, and 6 range here. All right, moving down to our next collection of picks here. This is picks 7 through 14. So let's first focus on pick 7 overall. Mitchell, I think you and I will both have some words to say on this one. The Magnolia Chicken Templados Hotshots took Thomas Sorber at number 7 overall. We have him currently ranked at number 8 overall. Now, Mitch, would you agree that there is a solid argument that he might be the best big man center in this draft?
Oh, 100%. But the caveat is you're probably going to have to wait a little bit longer than, let's say, a Derek Queen or a Kaman Malawach. Sorber has the most diversified 9-category stat set. He gives you some out-of-position assists. He has pretty solid steals for a center and really solid block rates, higher than Derek Queen and Kaman Malawach if you look at his block percentages. He has like an insane 7'6" wingspan. Uh, but the argument against him is like, oh, okay, I do have to wait 1 to 2 years until Hartenstein's kind of outplayed of his contract in terms of allowing the financial flexibility to for those rookie extensions in J. Dub and Chet Holmgren. So you're really more so on the waiting game and hoping that he develops and that skill set translates. But an overall stat set, uh, Thomas Sorber is 100% the best prospect here at the center position. Andrew, would you rather wait 1 to 2 years for Thomas Sorber to really develop under Hartenstein and then finally see that type of production that we know is possible given his stat set? Or would you rather take the gamble on a Derek Queen or a Kaman Malawach who will probably get rotational minutes as a rookie?
I think the only argument here at this point is maybe Kamal Malawach. I'm avoiding anything that's related to Troy Weaver like the plague. So it's like you're asking me to choose between Sam Presti or Troy Weaver and their overall thoughts on a prospect selection and prospect development. I'm taking the OKC side every time. Just these winning teams establish better habits in these rookies, whereas Derek Queen might develop some nasty habits running alongside Zion and being in a team that I don't really know how competitive New Orleans is going to be this year. Kaman Malowich might actually have a pretty good role for Phoenix, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if that actually turns out well for him. So I would see a better argument for him at this point. And I did like Queen a lot in the pre-draft process too. I just don't like that landing spot for him, honestly, whatsoever. And I don't like the GM that's in charge of that organization right now too. So that's one I'm probably staying away from. I think I would prefer Sorber at this point, even if you have to wait 1 to 2 years, but all of our leagues like Fantrax and Sleeper have those minor spot or taxi squad spots. So you can easily stick Sorber there while he learns under the tutelage of a great center in Isaiah Hartenstein. He's learning under Mark Dagnall. He has some of the best access to some of the best shooting coaches in the world in OKC. I think this is who you got to go with in here, purely due to the organization that he's with, and also purely due to the overall upside that Sorber as a center prospect represents. Let's move on to our next one. The Seattle Supersonics at pick number 8 overall took Yegor Demin. So this was really just 7 and 8 on our big board being flipped around. Number 7 was more confident in Thomas Sorber because Yegor Demin is a little bit of a controversial prospect. People are pretty afraid of his overall shooting profile, which is understandable. He at least has the confidence to put up that volume of three-point attempts. I really like the assist rate from him too. And just what Brooklyn did by taking him at that spot really represents how comfortable they are with just taking that swing on him as their playmaker, their point guard of the future. So I don't blame Seattle whatsoever with going with that Yegor pick there, because I do like what Brooklyn has been doing overall lately with their team too. That brings us to number 9 overall. The Providence Steamrollers took Derek Queen. So I know I said a little bit about how I don't like his situation. Mitchell or Braxton, feel free to chime in here. Are you also not fans of his situation in New Orleans?
Well, can I ask? And I said, are you not? I mean, the amount that they traded to get him does that not factor in for you with the two firsts?
I do agree. I do agree that they really took a risk getting him, which probably should show how much they did want him. So there is credit to that. You do have a point there.
So I mean, I like you said, I don't think Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver are going to put together a good basketball team, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't put together. They can't have good fantasy assets on that terrible team. Do I think the Pelicans are going to be terrible? Maybe. I mean, they made some decent moves. I like the Jordan Poole trade. I like how they got Sadiq Bey. I think he's a really nice, going to be a really nice contributor for them. I think Derek Queen and Yves Missi are going to split. Actually, well, no, maybe not even split minutes down the middle because Kevon Looney there is now there as well, and they're paying him $8 million, and I don't think it's going to be the third string center. So it might be a little bit of a position battle there. Similar to what you said, Andrew. I think if Queen went to I don't know, somewhere where it wasn't as crowded and there wasn't as many questions as to where that usage was going to come from, where somebody like Zion might be gobbling up boards and taking any playmaking duties that Derek Queen might have. And I know they said during the summer league they'll kind of let him do whatever he wants with the ball, but when he gets time to be in season, is he going to have the ball in his hands? Is he going to be making plays? Remains to be seen. How is those minutes going to be divvied up between Misi and Kevon Looney? It's a little bit concerning for me. And you guys know I was super high on Queen coming into the draft because of that. His ability to do a little bit of everything, and how guys know how much I like the centers that can pass the ball and have guard skills, right? Not that Derek Queen has high level guard skills or anything, but would have liked to see a better situation for him. I do love the pick at this point in the draft at 9. If he went I had, and the reason I say that is because I have seen him go a little bit earlier, like in the 6 or 7 range. So I like the valuation on Queen here at 9.
Mitchell, walk us through your selection at number 10 overall for your newest player on the San Miguel Beermen.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is probably the biggest draft riser in the 2025 draft process. I came from, Washington State, started in Division III, and he really moved his way up. And, the appeal here for me is that he doesn't hurt you in any statistical category. And there's a pathway for him to be eventually, not saying he will right away, the starting shooting guard for the Memphis Grizzlies, especially with the departure of Desmond Bane. Cedric Coward, he has ideal size at 6'5", 6'6", with a 7'2" wingspan. He doesn't have those T-Rex arms of Desmond Bane, so he offers a little bit more flexibility in terms of defensive scheme there. I don't believe KCP is a long-term starting shooting guard at this point of his career, so expect Cedric Coward to eventually take over that role while also providing great fantasy value because he's uber efficient. He gets out of position, assists as a shooting guard, small forward. His block rate is honestly almost as high as Kaman Malawach. Not saying it will translate in the NBA, but his 7'2" wingspan definitely helps. And he's someone that I was honestly considering uh, if I had a top 7, 6, 7 pick, even reaching that high for him because that's how high I am on Cedric Coward. And hopefully it pans out, especially since there are other, coveted options on the board where I could have probably traded down, but at this point in the draft, I was just going to take my guy and move forward.
Okay. So solid pick there at number 10. That also lined up with our big board at number 10. Number 11, the PSV Red Lions took Kaman Malawach. I really like this pick for Ignaz, landing his center of the future. At this point on the board, this is easily who I would have taken as well. Not just for dynasty upside, but for immediate production too. There is for sure 20-ish minutes up for grabs for Malawach to attain in that Phoenix rotation here. And he really doesn't need that much time to be a productive fantasy asset. So the blocks, the rebounding, being a very, very good athlete for his size, I like this pickup for PSV here. They needed more things going for them. And I think landing a center like this as kind of just a staple for that spot in his rotation, very solid pickup for you here, Ignaz. I like this one quite a bit. Let's move on to our next pick here, number 12 overall. Our friends from Point Made Basketball, shout out to Josh, shout out to Sam, took Jeremiah Fears. So, like we just covered, Troy Weaver, Joe Dumars, do they know what they're doing? Probably not. Is Jordan Poole and Jeremiah Fears roughly the same kind of player? Probably yes. Will Jeremiah Fears benefit from learning under Jordan Poole? I also would argue probably yes. So this is something where it might be like we talked about with Sorber, it might be like a 1 to 2 year thing where we start to see real production hit. There's other guards that are in New Orleans too. Jose Alvarado is still there. They still have Jordan Hawkins on this team as well too. So the guard rotation isn't necessarily like, oh, there's a wide open point guard role for Jeremiah Fears to seize. That's definitely not the case. There is for sure some bodies there that might be in his way depending on how his first season goes. So I do, of course, trust Point Made, Josh, and Sam's rookie evaluation process. So maybe I'm in the wrong here, and maybe Jeremiah Fears is going to be an absolute hit. I did like him a lot pre-draft, and I still do like him. I'm just not a huge fan of that landing spot, especially after we saw Poole go there too. It almost feels like New Orleans has 3 versions of the same player. So that's going to be one that we will see play out here moving forward. Moving on to our next pick number 13, the Singapore Slingers took Carter Bryant. So according to our big board, this was more of a reach because we have Carter 20th overall. So reaching back from 13 to 20th. And this is over somebody like in the next pick, which was a Colin Murray-Boyle. So for Carter Bryant here, the main issue is what is the output and usage going to look like? I felt like Carter Bryant was more selected as a role player, as a glue guy who really fits the Spurs' needs, as opposed to fits what us in fantasy would want, which is, high output from a statistical standpoint. So, do either of you have any thoughts here on this Carter Bryant selection? Is Joey kind of really, being ahead of the game, seeing a big breakout from Bryant, or might he regret this? Might there not be enough output from Bryant?
I think that there are other options on the board that I probably would have took, given, San Antonio has a plethora of guards. I mean, a plethora of forwards. They still have Jeremy Sohan, Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson. If they end up starting the 3 guard lineup of Fox, Harper, and Castle, maybe Vassell plays some small ball 4. So It's tough to see a strong pathway for Bryant, especially since his role or his production, uh, he he really relies on those steals and probably blocks. Uh, but you have someone like Colin Murray Boyles, who is another defensive prospect still on the board, who probably has not only the draft capital given in his favor, but someone who we view as a more well-rounded asset and skill set uh, than Carter Bryant. So I'm a little bit shaky on that pick, but I do see the vision given he's one of the younger prospects in this draft class, and the Spurs generally have a pretty good development program overall.
Yeah, and he is going to play a lot right away. They do need a player like him playing a lot. I'm just really curious what the statistical output, nine category wise, is going to look like. But let's move on to pick number 14 here. This is a player where Mitch and I, throughout the whole big board creation process, said this guy's rank for us is going to be the most reliant on his landing spot pretty much out of anybody else on our board, and that's Colin Murray Boyles. We were not thrilled with the Toronto Raptors as a landing spot. Murray Boyles did get picked up by, again, our friends at Point Made. The New York Knicks took him here at number 14 overall. So basically, we pretty much always had Murray Boyles at the back end of the lottery, 13 or 14. We gladly would have moved him up to the top 10 if he went to a place that we liked, but he didn't. So New York got bang on value for this here. We have him as 14. They took him at 14. At this point, once you get to the back end of the lottery, regardless of what team he's on, this is worth the risk to take Murray Boyles. This is a very interesting 9-category stat set. 1 point shout out to Case that he made, which is true. A lot of the Raptors players are very offensive minded, and they don't have a ton of guys to do the dirty work. And I think that's kind of what Murray Boyles' main job is going to be. So that might turn into some nice fantasy output for him. Okay, moving on. The Beijing Ducks at number 15 overall took Kasparis Giacojonas. We have him as number 11 overall. The main reason why is because we really like that Heat landing spot. This big board was created prior to Norman Powell going to Miami. So I think that might potentially affect his spot on our big board a little bit because that does crowd up the guard room. I mean, there was a lot of people that were very high on even Davion Mitchell going into this next season for Miami, which again, Norm Powell complicates that. So, let me ask you about this, Mitchell. Does this worry you at all for Kasparis, this Norman Powell arrival?
Um, I mean, yes and no. Like Kasparis is a different position than a Norman Powell. Norman Powell is a great off the ball creator, especially in those cuts and then off the screens. Kasparis is that pick and roll ball handler that Miami really coveted and wanted. They really, I think they really struck gold here. I know he's having some issues in terms of separation in summer league right now, but we can't judge Kasparis off those first couple of games in summer league where, players like Evan Mobley struggled, players like Jalen Brunson struggled. Future stars in the league were very inefficient in summer league. So I still think long term, Kasparis is a great pick for Miami. I think he'll have that opportunity, especially since they have been uh, playmaking by committee, and he fills that void. So I'm pretty excited for that landing spot, Andrew, and I think this is a pretty bang on value for the Beijing Ducks. Don't sell low, please, after two summer league games that don't even matter. Just hold Castris and kind of see where what he has, especially since he was seen as a top five pick earlier in that season before that earlier in the college season before coming down with an injury.
All right, very good. So let's move on to the next pick, the mystery box. The big tariff himself, Hanson Yang, went number 16 overall, and he went to Velez Sarsfield. So we talked about in a previous podcast how pick number 16 was involved in a few trades. And in this situation, Velez wanted Yang. He traded to get into this spot so that he could select him. In addition to that, We also saw Portland get rid of DeAndre Ayton. So we still had Yang within our top 20 even prior to this. Now with Ayton gone, we'll see if he potentially might move up a little bit within our big board too. They might be running this two center rotation, not at the same time, obviously, but think more like Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford on the Mavs, not last year, but the season prior to that. Between Donovan Clean and Hanson Yang, that might be what we see here. I wouldn't really take too much stock into a Time Lord at this point in time. I'm not sure if Duop Reith is still under contract with them or not, so I'm really considering the main Portland centers here to be Klingon and Yang. So this is someone who has a very great passing acumen, is very big, absolutely shredded physically. Very, very interesting here, but he is still a mystery box just due to the level of competition he was playing in. We're not exactly sure how this is going to go, but just to see, we weren't expecting him to go in the first round at all. But so just to see Portland draft a random guy sitting in the crowd in the top 20 was, top moment all time for us on our live stream. That was a very fun reaction that we had to that one. So very exciting pick there for Adrian at Villa Sarsfield. I'm very, very, very curious to see how that one turns out for him. All right, moving on to number 17 overall. Blackwater Boston took Walter Clayton Jr., a standout player from Florida, one of the best scorers in this draft class. Just an absolute bucket getter. Pretty bang on with the value here. He only reached up 2 spots, which doesn't really mean a whole lot in this context. In addition to that, Blackwater needed cheap contributors for himself too, so solid pick for him there. If anybody doesn't have anything to add, then I will move on to the next one. All right, very good. Our friends, again, at Point Made, the New York Knicks took Nolan Traore with this pick. So they went with a lot of these upside picks here. Nolan Traore, Colin Murray-Boyles, Jeremiah Fears, a lot of guys that people liked a ton in the pre-draft process. Maybe weren't thrilled about their landing spot, but our friends at Point Made said, screw it. We're going to bet on the overall player themselves as opposed to their landing spot. And I respect the hell out of that. So Nolan Traore went at number 18 overall. Again, not much of a reach here. Brooklyn really invested in playmakers in their first round here. They really said at least one or two of these 4 playmakers that we drafted is going to be a hit for us in this first round here. Nolan Traore had a very high pedigree early on in the draft process, like early into maybe the fall of last year. He was someone that we considered was going to be maybe a top 5 pick. He slid out to that due to some poor performances in the French league. However, he did have quite a bit of a bounce back at the end of that season too. So that's someone you should keep a very close eye on, Nolan Traore. Now, Mitchell, walk us through this next pick here. At number 19 overall, you got Noah Esenge, and that's someone that we have number 12 overall on our big board. Talk me through this process for you.
Yeah, this one was a no-brainer for me. Here at Angle, we really loved what Noah brings to the table. He has some hidden upside. Right now, he can contribute due to his motor. He'll rack up rebounds. He's highly efficient at the rim, and he draws a lot of fouls for someone pretty skinny in frame. So we're going to hope that he builds that out a little bit. But that free throw rate is a huge indicator that correlates to star potential in the NBA. So Noah Senge, if he can ever develop that on-ball creation, he's going to be a future star. If not, he's going to be a high-energy, toolsy defensive player that doesn't need the ball in his hands to contribute. So whether it's the floor, I'm completely fine with that. I know what I'm getting. Defensive stats on high field goal percentage. But if that on-ball creation ever develops, man, I love that pick at 19.
All right. Very good. Very good. All right. So these next 2 picks, I know you have a little bit of an opinion about these next 2 guys here, Braxton. So maybe we'll turn it to you here. So first off, our boy Phil with the Los Angeles Lakers at pick 20, he took Yannick Conan Niederhauser. And now in defense of Phil, as well as us here, because we had him 23 on our big board, this was prior to the LA Clippers bringing in both Brook Lopez and John Collins. I didn't really label the Clippers as a big potential buyer in the front court market, and I think that was a mistake. I should have, because last year their front court rotation outside of Ivica Zubac was Nick Batum, Kai Jones for a bit, Ben Simmons for a bit, Drew Eubanks for a bit as well is really kind of a mess once Zubac was off the floor. So initially, once this pick was made, we were like, holy shit, YKN's going to be the second string center for the Clippers. That's amazing value. The highest block rate in this class. Placed first overall in half of the combine measurements among centers. He's an absolute freak athlete. And then the Clippers bring in Brook Lopez. And then the Clippers bring in John Collins. So any thoughts here that we wanted to discuss on YCAN? Do we like him as a prospect? We just might need to wait on him for a little bit.
I want to contest the timing of the pick. I think it was within like 15 minutes of Brooks signing or something. This pick was made. Just for reference, I with the some of the additions that they've made, I don't like Yannick Niederhauser at this spot with who else was left on the board, and you'll see there was quite the run on centers from 20 to like 25. Uh, uh, Yannick Niederhauser is like probably fifth out of like five centers that are gonna go here in these next few picks. I just he's blocked at minimum for 2 seasons behind Brook Lopez as the backup center, and then beyond that, who knows, right? Not that age is a big factor for me in rookies, but he's not really going to get the chance to see a lot of real NBA minutes for the first couple seasons. And then who knows by then what this team is going to look like. It's possible, I guess, when some of these older Clipper guys age out, that he, sees more of a role in a few years, but it's not somebody who has a skill set, in my opinion, that's worth waiting on, especially when they seem determined to keep Zubac there long term. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this pick, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I get the upside for the blocks, but yeah, definitely a victim of the timing with the Brook trade happening shortly after. I mean, obviously he was on the clock, the Lakers in this situation for 24 hours. So if he made the pick immediately, then he would have saw the Brook news a day later. But then he saw the Brook news maybe 15 or so minutes later, which made it sting even more. But we'll see how that one turns out, because I do like the athleticism, I do like the block rate, but there was some very good, talented guys that went after him. And this is someone you might also have an opinion on, Brax, which is Rasheer Fleming went at number 21 overall to Velez Sarsfield. We had him 22 on our big board. So this is going to the Phoenix Suns, who completely revamped their front court rotation. Guys like Oso Ighodaro are in major danger here of some of these people, Mark Williams, Kaman Malawach, and Rasheer Fleming being brought into the fold. And one thing we're seeing, similar to like what happens with the NFL draft, when day 2 rolls around, you'll usually see a major trade go down to select that, or have the right to select first overall in the second round. And that's what we're starting to see in the NBA now that day 2 of the draft, now that the second round of the draft has moved on to being its own day in itself. And so the Phoenix Suns position themselves to gain Rasheer Fleming. So how do you feel about his spot in the rotation with Phoenix, Brax?
It's specifically year one. It's a little concerning to me. I know based on what you said, that first pick in the second round is actually probably a better spot than guys who go like 27, 28, 29, 30, right? In terms of the year one contributions, you usually see those guys at that 28, 29, 30 range be more project type guys, where the early second round guys are guys who may be more ready year one. I don't know if Oso Ighodaro is just going to fully go away. I mean, he had a little. I obviously this is bad for him, but I'm not sure Rasheer Fleming steps into a major role year one. This is a few picks higher than I would have gone, just based on who was left on the board at this point. Royce O'Neal is still in Phoenix, right? I know they have a ton of different guards, but there's not a ton of minutes to go around. I mean, they have Mark Williams and even Nick Richards, who are not going to play next to each other, obviously, at the center. So even if Fleming is on the court next to one of these big body centers, how much statistical output is he going to be putting together? I don't know. Now, obviously, once you get in this early 20s range, these aren't going to be like knockout type guys. Same thing that goes with YKN, right? But I don't know. I just the draft capital is. I will say, and here's how I want to frame this: his situation does not outweigh his lack of draft capital for me at this 21st position. If I'm taking somebody 21, I want if I'm taking a second rounder at 21, I should say, I want his outlook and kind of the guys who are around him to be much more clear in terms of what he's going to be doing in year one. So.
All right, very good, very good. So let's cover the last guy on this page, which is Yom Berenger. He went to the Singapore Slingers. So this pick was also made prior to the extensions of Naz Reid and Julius Randle. So we had that thought of, oh, wow, maybe a massive role might open up within the Minnesota front court. And then that slam shut on us really quick. This is probably more of a project pick at this point for Minnesota. However, I do like Berenger quite a bit as a prospect. I just don't know if I would expect a ton year one. It might be more like that Sorber situation where maybe you need to wait a year or two, but the payoff might be massive after that year or two. So not a bad pick at all for Singapore, especially because something that's mentioned quite a bit in the podcast covering the Angle Dynasty League. Guys get pretty stingy with the center position in this league. It can be hard to find at times. All right, now we're getting into a fun range because these next three picks is all you and me here, Braxton. So Braxton, you went with back-to-back centers here, and you can walk us through these next two picks. The first one at number 23 overall, you got Ryan Kalkbrenner. And then the second one at number 24 overall, you got Danny Wolf. So let's hear about it, how you're excited for your new Charlotte Sting rookie centers.
Yeah, so Kalkbrenner, and this kind of bleeds into that point I was saying with Bashir Fleming just a second ago, where if you're taking a guy in this range who has like second round draft capital, you want that positional outlook or kind of his competition to be a knockout situation. And I think Kalkbrenner really has that, right? They brought in Mason Plumlee, who, will probably see minutes, right? But it's not really any kind of concern in terms of a long-term outlook, or let's say the Hornets are going to, if they're bad this year, and I'm going to throw it out right now, I think they might win 40 games. I'm just going to say it. Kalkbrenner is somebody who it seems like they're going to prioritize, right? They traded Mark Williams for, what was it, 28 or 29, and then a future first round pick as well. That future first is going to be very, very good, right? But it seems like they did that with the idea in mind that they're going to take Kalkbrenner with that early second round pick. I'm really liking his outlook this season and beyond. He's 23 years old. He's ready to go. Him and Diabate are going to split minutes, maybe not down the middle, but Kalkbrenner is going to see some nice stats in year one. I love his skill set as a big, and I think he's going to be a great category guy. Danny Wolf, if you guys know me, you probably could have seen this pick coming. Anybody who can pass from the center slot is somebody who I'm going to be targeting. I'm really liking him on this Nets team. I know that they did just bring in, or re-sign rather, Day'Ron Sharpe, in addition to having Nick Claxton, but I think it's possible with Danny Wolf's skill set that we might see some minutes at the 4. Drew Timme is still under contract for the Nets. They picked up his option. So it'll be interesting to see kind of I feel like every time the Nets like sign somebody, I'm like, okay, now they have to be out of roster spots, but then they'll sign somebody else, or they'll make 5 first round picks and bring all of them over year one. There's no draft and stash here for Brooklyn. So we might see some really interesting lineups from Brooklyn, and I think Danny Wolf is going to be a big benefactor of that. If he plays any minutes next to Claxton or Day'Ron Sharpe, I think it's going to be so huge for him. And yeah, just assists out of the center spot is something I really like, and somebody I'm definitely targeting in this range, and I think he has a lot of output in year one. Not a lot, but just enough to be relevant in a 30-team league, I should say.
All right, very good. So that takes us down to pick number 25 overall. Many of you might be wondering, who still took Maxime Reynaud as a first-round pick? Obviously, it was me that did it. So, yes, we were a bit down after he went to pick number 42. I was very confident he was going to be either a late first or a very early second-round pick. But it seems like he and Sacramento had an agreement where, once they got to the second round, he was going to tell everybody not to take him, and he's going to go to Sacramento instead. So I made this pick very shortly after that draft happened, and I was pretty much making it from like the standpoint of, I've been high on him in this whole time. I trust my evaluation process, and basically the captain's going to go down with the ship at this point. Then Jonas Valanciunas gets traded away from Sacramento. Then Maxime Reynaud gets a guaranteed contract out of his draft position. I still believe in Maxime as a prospect. I was happy to grab another center to add to my team. Someone's going to be under a very cheap, cost-controlled contract for the next 4 years. And it's possible for maybe even him to play on the court at the same time as Domantas Sabonis. Think back to Sabonis and Miles Turner being on the floor at the same time. So that's why I still went with him here, even prior to that J-Val and guaranteed contract news. And now those two things just make me feel even better about that pick.
Andrew, I just want to chime in. I think there's major AJ Mitchell type outlook in terms of potential here for him. Obviously, you and Mitch were so high on him going into the draft last year. Could not have paid off any better for AJ Mitchell. And I think your comment about trusting your gut and your evaluation process is like bang on. Like I think there's a lot of potential for this to be a similar pick to Mitchell. And we didn't see Mitchell go in the first round in 30-team leagues last year. We saw him go early second, mid 30s, close to where he was drafted in real life. I think reaching for Raynaud here, despite his real life draft capital, is the move, especially with the situation in Sacramento. So I'm rooting for you, and I think you may have found something good here.
That's right. I mean, even our boy AJ started initially on a two-way and played himself into a guaranteed contract, whereas Raynaud is starting off on a guaranteed contract, and that's always what shifts my opinion on second rounders. Once we get to a few days past the draft, you'll start to see who lands a two-way and who lands a guaranteed contract, and that sways my opinion wildly on the outlook of some of these second rounders. Okay, moving on to pick number 26 overall, the Providence Steamrollers took Isa Newell. This is pretty bang on with his value of what we have in our big board. Yes, maybe the Atlanta Hawks in real life had some better fitting pieces on the board, but they took the Georgia boy. Born in Atlanta, went to the University of Georgia. Now he's going to play for the Atlanta Hawks. So that's a pretty cool story overall. Number 27 overall, the Magnolia Chicken Tablatos Hot Shots took Neek Clifford. This was my next potential pick instead of Raynaud. These were the main two names I was focusing on for my pick overall at number 25. I do still like Neek a lot. I think he has that Josh Hart type of archetype as a 9-category fantasy player. And we might see some additional moves that happens with the Sacramento backcourt. Maybe one of those, maybe Malik Monk gets moved away. I know that's been heavily rumored. Nothing's official yet. But something along those lines will help Neek Clifford out quite a bit, finding some more minutes in the rotation. That brings us to the New York Knicks. Again, our friends at Point Made, they had quite a few picks in this first round here. They took Jace Richardson. So I think you saw him fall a bit in this draft, because by the time we made this most recent big board of ours, and by the time this draft happened, Desmond Bane was officially landed in Orlando. Because when the draft initially happened, we absolutely loved this landing spot for Jace Richardson. Match made in heaven between both him and Orlando. But Desmond Bane coming to the picture does complicate things for a little bit. It is still a great fit for Jace in Orlando. Just the overall minutes outlook for him year one is maybe a little bit more impacted than it initially was prior to Bane landing there. But don't give up on Jace just yet. Especially at the back end of this first round, I think it's still totally fine to take him at this point.
And if you can imagine Jace as a Peyton Pritchard type, right? This is still a pretty valuable player that you could take in the back end of the first round, especially because Peyton Pritchard is seen as a borderline top 100 dynasty asset. Jace's game isn't too far off of a Peyton Pritchard, especially since he's probably going to be thrusted into more of a six-man role in his NBA career for Jace.
Very good point. Now, moving on to our next pick here, number 29 overall was Will Riley. And oftentimes in our big board, we will see a selection happen in the first round, and we have no issue putting them as, maybe a mid-tier second round prospect on our big board. We did that last year with AJ Johnson, for example, and we did that again this year with Will Riley, who we have as 37 overall on our big board, but was taken 29 overall. I definitely understand going after the draft stock of Will Riley because he was a first round pick in real life. I think this is a player who would have greatly benefited from staying an additional year at Illinois. I think if he did stay an additional year, he probably would have been a teens pick, maybe even a back end lottery pick. But with that being said, with me being so high on him, if he stayed an extra year, well, now what if that year happens in the G League? He gets good development, and then he ends up being a good piece for the Wizards. It's possible, but the Wizards are very, very crowded in his position that he plays, that 2, 3, 4 position. The Wizards are really stacking up on wings right now in general. So we'll see if that one plays out, but this might be a pretty long-term project in regards to Will Riley. That was made by the Providence Steamrollers, by the way. And the Providence Steamrollers also had pick 30 overall, which he used on Hugo Gonzalez. I like this pitch, or this pick, I should say, much more. I think he could have gone as early as even 24, 25, like mine and Brax's picks up there. Just that opportunity in Boston this year is massive. There's not a ton of like big names that he needs to compete with for playing time at his position. I think he's a great defensive prospect. Had some great combine measurements. There's just, not a lot of great sample sizes we have of Hugo during his time at Real Madrid. So we'll see how things go for him in Boston. But great coach, great environment, and a great opportunity for some minutes year one. Okay, now we are into the second round here. So the first pick of the second round, pick number 31 overall, was made by the Brisbane Bullets. He took Adu Thiero. I love this pick for the Lakers. I love this pick for the Brisbane Bullets as well. Hyper athletic wing, not necessarily a shooter, but more so like on the defensive side of a prospect is probably what I would say the mindset is here. But he was a great scorer for Arkansas too, actually. So this is probably, at least as of now, since the Lakers haven't made any other big signings, and since the free agent pool has dried up a bit, this seems to be at least somewhat of the direct replacement to Dorian Finney-Smith. Maybe there is some type of trade the Lakers made that kind of negates that, but as of right now, this is really the only kind of wing prospect we've brought in, and the Lakers need more wings. So right now it's like Adu Thiero and Jake Laravia, Rui Hachimura. Not a ton else outside of that that's really relevant to us in fantasy and dynasty leagues. So solid pick here by Brisbane. Now within our league, the Los Angeles Lakers, Phil took Janai Broom. This is someone, Mitch, you can attest to this. Phil's been talking to us about Janai Broom since, well into last season when he was at Auburn. He really liked the way he played. And then when he was on the board for this pick here, he took a lot of time with making it. And we told him just to go with his gut. He ended up sticking with Broom here. He had a great first summer league performance, right?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, he doesn't need a lot of time to stay productive. And despite his wingspan, despite his wingspan and despite his vertical, Janai Broom racks up defensive stats like no other. So I love this from not only someone who's able to produce potentially right away, given Embiid's health concerns, and given Phil's focus shift towards winning in this upcoming season for fantasy, Janai Broom is really a great plug-and-play option here at pick 32.
Very good. Okay, so now that we're in the second round, I'm going to start naming off these picks one after another. And essentially, if one of you two have something to add about this player, feel free to speak up and let me know. But this second round is going to move a bit faster than the first round did. Now, our friend, Mein Frau Hast Fantasy Basketball, the owner of Alba Berlin, took Ben Seraph at number 33 overall. I love this. He took a Euro player. This is a Euro guy. He lives in Germany. Solid pick for him. This is a good bet early on in the second round. Number 34 overall, Magnolia Chicken Templados Hot Shots took Liam McNeely, who is now on the Charlotte Hornets in real life. I know he fell a little bit out of the first round here. We weren't super ecstatic about his landing spot in Charlotte, but Charlotte needs shooters, Charlotte needs wings, so it is something that could work out a bit here. Next up, Real Madrid Baloncesto, my team. We took Drake Powell at number 35 overall. At this point, I'm betting more on the age, hyper athleticism, and at least the concept of him being a great defensive-minded player. Think more towards like a Peyton Watson on the Denver Nuggets. That's kind of the idea I was going with here for Drake Powell, and I'm totally fine with him being a stash in my minor spot majority of the year if that's what's ended up happening with him. Number 36 overall, the Chicago Bulls took Cam Jones. Solid pick there, especially with Halliburton out for the year. Mitch, I know you like Cam Jones a bit as a prospect too.
Yep, he's honestly probably evolved his game like no other in terms of being an upperclassman. Tyler Kolek was initiating the offense in Marquette alongside Oso Ighodaro. Cam Jones gets thrusted into that primary initiator role and really thrived, having an assist to turnover ratio of 3 to 1. So uber efficient. I think he's going to be a great fit with the Indiana Pacers and someone you could probably pump his value up and flip for maybe a back end first round pick later into the season.
I
Ooh.
think Jones is rising up a lot of boards right now, and I think anytime you can get someone who's like for sure going to be playing and racking up stats at this point in the draft, I think it's a win. So I like Cam Jones at this spot as well.
Yeah. If you're in a deep league like this and you get to round two, so pick 30 and beyond. So I'm not referring to round two of a 12-team league. I'm referring to round two of a 30-team league. Focus more on immediate minutes than age. Age is really where it kind of goes out the window for me in the second round because the majority of the time, these super young guys in the second round are G League stashes or even overseas stashes. Whereas a lot of these guys, such as a Janai Broom, such as a Cam Jones, such as an Adu Thiero, are expected to hit the ground running and perform immediately. Even Maxime Reynaud, who went pick 42 in real life, he's an older prospect as well. He's expected to produce immediately. So that's more what I prefer in a second round of a deep league dynasty setting, and those are the guys you can extract some major value of out of either via trade or just starting them in your team right away. So focus more on immediate opportunity at minutes as opposed to age once we get into round two. Of course, when we're in round one, you could focus more on those guys that are still 18, 19 years old as opposed to the upperclassmen. That's totally fine. But in round two, honestly, those things flip for me. Number 37 overall, Noah Penda went to the Providence Steamrollers. Solid prospect, just kind of buried a little bit on that Orlando depth chart. Number 38 overall, the Nelson Giants. I think this was his lone draft pick here in the draft. He took Tyrese Proctor. Number 39 overall, the Toronto Raptors. Shout out to Slice. He took Bogoljob Markovic. I will say KK Megabasket does have a very high success rate in the NBA with their prospects. So I like the gamble on this here, as well as the Bucks, I think, are in for a pretty wacky season. Now comes pick number 40. The PSV Red Lions went with another solid center selection here. He took the young, the promising Rocco Sikorsky. Mitch, do you have any quick words that you wanted to add on Rocco? I know you like him a lot too.
Yeah, I think at this point you're going to gamble on the block rate, taking one of the youngest prospects in this draft cycle. He's 7'4". He has a long wingspan, and yeah, you know he's going to be behind Behringer, who they just drafted in the first round. But he doesn't need a lot of time to contribute. So even if he only plays 10 minutes uh, by the end of his rookie scale contract, um, that may be good enough to kind of round out your depth chart in a 30-team competitive league as like your third or fourth center option.
Very good. Next up, sorry, the Nelson Giants did have two picks in this draft. At number 41 overall, he took Brooks Barnhizer. 9 category stat set, incredible. Playing time available to him on OKC, almost zero. This is something you're going to have to be a little bit patient with, but I absolutely get the concept of what Brooks Barnhizer might supply here. 42 overall, the Beijing Ducks took Amari Williams. Now, this is someone I told you, Brax, you might be interested in because Amari Williams at the University of Kentucky averaged over 2 assists per game. In addition to that, the Celtics center rotation right now is Neemias Queta and Luka Garza. So this might be a very, very interesting player here to look at once you're getting into the second round, maybe at the end of the 30s or in the early 40s range. This is someone I would for sure have a pretty good look at for 9 category statistical output. 43 overall, Blackwater Bossing took Caleb Love. Obviously, Blackwater Bossing went with who was most familiar to him here. Caleb Love gained a lot of popularity about 2-3 years ago during his championship or national championship game run with the University of North Carolina. Probably a lot of other selections we would have preferred here. Our friend Mark from Sports Ethos with the Houston Comets, he took Vladislav Golden at pick number 44, solid center playing out of Michigan. This is the only center left at this point in the draft as well. 45 overall, our friends at Point Made, the New York Knicks, they took Jameer Watkins. Pretty crowded situation for him there at Washington, so this is more of a stash pick for them. 46 overall, our friend Colby at Colossus Rose took Ryan Nembhard. We were much higher on Nembhard prior to Dallas bringing in D'Angelo Russell, retaining Dante Exum. We still do like Nembhard, though, because this is one of the highest assist producers at this point in the draft. 47 overall, I took Micah Peavy for myself with Real Madrid Malincesto. I'm pretty high on just what he can produce with his steals. Out of position assists. He also shot 40% from three as well. I have a gut suspicion that New Orleans might have found themselves basically a Herb Jones light here with Micah Peavy in the second round of this year's draft. Number 48 overall, the PSV Red Lions took Chaz Lanier. Detroit still doesn't really have a ton of shooting depth off the bench, so I really like him as a candidate to play a ton of minutes year one, especially in regards to a second rounder, a ton of minutes, I should say. 49 overall, the Sport Lisboa e Benfica. Shout out to Bruno, our friend in Portugal. He took Javon Small from the Memphis Grizzlies. He played for West Virginia, Press Virginia. I really do wish he more embodied that Press Virginia style of play, such as like a Deuce McBride does. Alba Berlin at number 50 overall, he took Sion James, who is now playing for the Hornets in real life. He was actually picked very highly by the Hornets in real life, but we consider him more in like the 50s just because we don't really know what his usage and output is going to be in Charlotte.
I got something to say. I think this is insane value at 50. Getting someone who was drafted 33rd overall this late in the draft is huge, not just from a value standpoint, but I do think James is going to be playing for the Hornets. I don't know where these minutes are going to come from, but they were playing Seth Curry and Daquan Jeffries legitimate minutes for like more than half the season last year. I know that Trey Mann is coming back. I know that Colin Sexton is coming in, but I think they're going to find minutes for him. He seems very NBA ready to me, and a lot of stuff that I had read, the rumors were that it was likely that a contender was going to grab him sometime in the second round and have him be kind of a low-end contributor off the bench. The Hornets grabbing him there indicates to me that they view him as part of the rotation. So I do think we're going to see minutes from him very early in the season. And I think at 50 here, where most of these guys are probably honestly going to be nothing, I think that's incredible value there. So,
all right, very good. Now, pick number 51, Dubai basketball took Kalen Peter. Shot 45% from three last year in college, so very interesting selection. 52, myself with Real Madrid, I took Kobe Brea, who I like to refer to as Brea Creek, a golf course Mitch and I have played on quite a few times. Just as a shooter, I think he might find some minutes in that Phoenix rotation due to that shooting prowess. We'll see how that turns out for him. 53 overall, this is another prospect I like. The New York Knicks took Alex Tui. I like him as a high field prospect, and I just have a gut feeling that this is a prospect that Steve Kerr is going to like and might give some minutes to. 54 overall, Alba Berlin took Elijah Martin. This is probably, solid value from a draft capital standpoint. Toronto did select Elijah Martin in pretty high up there in the second round. 55, the Seattle Supersonics took Will Richard. He was one of the key pieces to the championship run for the Florida Gators last year. Excellent shooter. Obviously, excellent shooters within Steve Kerr's system will benefit. 56, the Brisbane Bullets took Lachlan Ulbrich. This is, going with that Aussie heritage. I think this is a good stash pick for the Bulls. I don't think he'll be an overseas stash. I think he'll spend some time in the G League, but this is really one of the only young, high upside swings available at this point in the draft. Next up, 57, Alba Berlin took Max Shulga. I like this pick. He's on the Celtics. There could be some real open minutes for him to get during this year when the Celtics are going through a bit of a retool. I like his 9-category stat set, and he's one of the key players for the Ukraine FIBA national team too. So keep a close eye on Max Shulga. Pick 58, Colossus Rhodes took Eric Dixon. He's on a two-way with the Lakers. He was the leading scorer in the NCAA last year. So a wing, great scorer, might find some minutes on the Lakers. I like that pick. 59, the Boston Celtics took Salu Niang. We don't have him ranked because I strongly suspect him to be an overseas stash, so I don't see really any output
He
coming from
will
him
be.
year one. And then pick 60, New York Knicks took Hunter Salas. I know our boy Josh with the Knicks is a 76ers fan, so makes perfect sense for him to take Hunter Salas here. And either of you boys have anything to add as we close out the review of the Dynasty League draft for 2025 for our rookies here?
If you guys had to pick one from 50, between 50 and 60, who you think has the best shot at being fantasy relevant, who would you say?
50 to 60. I mean, I took the pick of Kobe Bryant, so I'm probably going to have to go with him with an honorable mention to Max Shulga. How about you, Mitch?
Can you go down a little bit? Uh, I kind of like Will Richard. Steve Kerr is a little bit wonky in terms of who he plays, and he always at least gives his rookies a chance at some point to contribute. And watching Will Richard in person was pretty cool as well. So maybe I'm a little bit biased, and also being on my team, the Golden State Warriors. So for me, Will Richard.
What about you, Brax?
Yeah, I'll go with is it Sion or Sion James?
Saya.
Sion.
Yeah.
I'll go with Sion James. I think for the points I just mentioned a second ago, I think the draft capital is incredible. They gave him, I think it was like $4.8 million guaranteed over the first 2 seasons. It's the max you can. That Bronny James contract, that max you can give them over the guaranteed. So I think they're going to find some minutes for him, and yeah, I am excited about him as a Hornets fan, but also as a low end, specifically in 30 team dynasties as a low end contributor.
All right. Very good. So that does it for us today. All 60 picks from our rookie draft have been covered. So if you want to keep tabs on the Angle Dynasty League and how this all goes, make sure to keep a close eye on our website, keep a close eye on the YouTube channel, and of course, please subscribe if you haven't already. We are on the road to 500 YouTube subscribers, so that would greatly help us out if you are able to help us with reaching that goal. That's going to do it for us today. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.